Welcome to Rabble, Rants Live. We've made it to another Friday. If you're in Ontario, you made it through that ice storm, so welcome with us. I know I've got some comrades still without power, so I guess I won't be seeing you folks here today. But yes, we've got a lot to unpack as we do every week. We first start with the headlines. They're never very good, right? So then the second half of the show, we talk about what people are doing about it. We give you updates from the grassroots activists, from the different movements across Turtle Island and beyond sometimes, and give you ways that you can plug in. And that obviously leads us to our last segment, which is activist tips of the week. And this week really is about how you can just plug in. How can you take those baby steps towards becoming an activist and getting involved in your community? Really broad strokes this time. And but it's worth tuning into the end, especially if you have not yet got your feet wet in fighting back against some of the things that we're going to start the story off our stories off with today. Let me introduce our panel, though, before we get going on those headlines. My name is Jessa McLean. I'm typically the host of Blueprints of Disruption, but I join this crew. It changes every week, but I'm always joined by Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Welcome.
And Chris today he's back, but Chris, can you introduce yourself to folks who maybe missed your first time round?
Yeah, hi. So my name's Chris Thompson. I'm the former interim leader of the New Brunswick NDP. So I did that from late 2020 to late 2021 and was involved with the party and have been in politics for 11, 12 years now.
And thanks, Chris. Michael's first time here. I love hearing Michael speak. I'm glad he's with us today, even though he has an incredibly busy schedule, I imagine. Michael, can you introduce yourself to people?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mike or Michael, whatever you want to call me. I live up in Barrie, and I am currently the Communist Party candidate in the riding of Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Excellent. So that's what I meant by Michael was busy. So Michael will definitely have something to say when we get to the Canadian election updates that we do before we transition into the next segment. But I'm sure he's got lots to say on a lot of the topics that we're going to be talking about. I know I do. So, but I'm going to let Chris introduce our first topic. It's probably what most people are talking about right now. It is trending. Chris, what the fuck happened to the stock market? Will you update us, please?
Well, no one actually knows what the fuck happened to the stock market, but stuff happens all the time. It goes. The important thing to remember is that it goes up and it goes down, and it probably will affect you not at all. But you're gonna hear a lot about it, and so it's probably important someone or somewhere you trust actually talks about it. Yeah. The major things to note, of course, are you had that big, what you'll call a tariff announcement, of course, from the U.S. stock market. Takes a big hit, but what actually took a hit is what I find really, really interesting. On average, this is the worst day we've had since COVID, and it's not even close. It's like you have all the COVID stuff. Things were going down by around 7%. There were 3 days that were at 7% during COVID. And,
we're still in COVID.
Yeah.
You mean the lockdown?
Yeah, during as far as the stock market's considered COVID, there was a very specific time period.
Fair enough.
And the with the today it's down, or yesterday it's down 5.5%. And what's really interesting is where you look at where it's down. Banks are down about 10%, the big banks. Airlines are down 15%. And retailers, particularly of consumer goods that are pieced together globally and have competition globally, went down about 20-25% in one day. So I give you a couple examples, like Dell Computers, I think, went down 19%. Under Armour, like the sportswear clothing, 19%.
Expensive.
I think Nike went down. Nike went down more than 15%.
Apple took a big hit too. Yeah.
What's important is what didn't go down, and that's your rent or your groceries or anything like that. And why is that? It's because those are captured markets oftentimes, and they have more monopoly power. So where these big global companies, which is what we think about when we talk tariffs, is everything's a big global company. Yeah, they'll get really impacted. This would be really bad for them. But your local monopoly, your landlord doesn't pay a tariff on your land rent. And if you have the same amount of people doing the same amount of work, but the economy's smaller, it means your margins are bigger. And that's essentially exactly what happens. When the stock market crashes, the reason why it can be bad for regular people is that you have a lot more people, so it's unbelievably now, but a lot more people will be working for rent and stuff as opposed to buying Under Armour and Dell computers. Those will be a less oversized share of the market, but everyone still has a lot of bills to pay. And we see that when you look at what actually went down in the stock market. It's all the stuff that people don't need to buy, that they want to buy, or anything to do with like global finance or travel or trade. So airlines and like.
Well, and what Vance is, trying to warn people and, tell them that they're just going to have to deal with inflation, which is got to be maddening for the folks who voted for Trump. They're so naive, but I mean, you're talking about like 74 million people who basically on the promise of lowering the cost of living. And he's made it his mission to do the opposite and now is copping to it. The mask is off. It's just like, yep, things are going to cost more. They can't even hold up that line that he's doing it. What was the quote that he used yesterday, though? Trump talking about an operation and he's the doctor and the country is the patient, and it's what a fucking mess. But Joe,
patients die during operations, so
yeah, it's really. I think, and that's part of him telling you that too, right? It's like he's not sugarcoating it. They're like, yeah, it's going to be fucking hard, people. Buckle up, prep for surgery, but. Everyone wants to know, like, why is he doing this? Why is he doing this? And now we find out a little bit of how they're doing it. Joe, what were you telling us before we went online? And these tariffs, I mean, everyone saw the board. It was like instant meme moment. Like everyone knew that would be recycled like 1,000 times over. He's got this giant oversized thing listing all the tariffs. I mean, there's countries on there that are places on there that are hardly inhabited or not inhabited at all. He's put tariffs on Israel and Ukraine as well, which I thought was a little bit funny. I mean, if I'm going to find any humor in any of this.
So, I mean, the most insane thing that... sorry, it's not insane.
We don't use that language.
The most bizarre, yet also at the same time, look at it as like, it's the most strange, bizarre, unusual thing, but it totally tracks. Like, it just... we're just at the point like, yeah, this totally tracks. Is the entire calculation in regards to the decision in regards to how these tariffs were decided upon was a prompt through ChatGPT, and it's all based on the fact that there's a trade deficit. That's the only, all the entire the counter tariffs that the U.S. is claiming they're putting on there isn't isn't in regards to tariffs that are existing, because all economists were looking at this going, there's no tariffs in some of these countries you're mentioning, particularly the ones that are inhabited by penguins. So what's going on? They're finding the trade deficits, doing the calculation for that, and then putting on a tariff based on the trade deficit that they have with these countries. And most economists are looking at this, this makes no sense. What's the purpose? Are you trying to it makes absolutely no sense. Again, this just is absolutely insane in regards to just this administration making no sense in regards to any of the policies that go in there. It feels like kids kind of trying to figure out how to pretend to do their job, and this is what they're doing, and it's just it's nuts.
I just saw Kazakhstan on the list. I didn't really catch that before. I know that country's notable for being the world's largest landlocked country. What
Yeah, right there.
Why do
Kazakhstan.
American tariffs even matter there? They're going through another country to begin with.
Yeah.
What do I know, man? I do know from an economic standpoint that Trump's a real estate guy. He's not really a business guy. He's a landlord. He's a real estate guy. Even our current prime minister, the asset management company he used to run, that's mainly a real estate investment firm. If corporations do worse, but your household still has to go to work the same amount of hours, you're spending that money somewhere, and it's going to be where they can bring up the prices of stuff on monopolies that are already controlled by local, what you would call an aristocracy. So that's your landlord, that's the grocery store you go to, any number of thing that can be monopolized because you don't have any amount of control over it. That's what goes up. They can't compete with Chinese companies. They can't compete with Japanese companies. American companies suck. Canadian companies are worse. This is, as far as I can tell, beyond the fact that it's nonsensical, it would be a way for the local rich in a country to recapture the wealth that's being sent overseas. And since he's talking about the deficit, the trade deficit all the time, I do think that's what's in his head. It's a ridiculous way to go about it, and people have never really dealt with the local aristocracies well, but with Canadian landlords, we surely see that coming back. It's not your local entrepreneur started a business. It's your local person who got an extra house from their mom.
Yeah.
There's definitely a grift happening somewhere with all this, but and just going back to the stock market, normally, we wouldn't care what happens to rich people's money and all that stuff. These big corporations, you're almost glad to see the profits going down or the stocks going down, except for the fact that because our public pension system sucks, and especially in the US, right? When the US pension, the 401ks are directly tied to investments. And even here, we have to, you almost have to have some type of investments in order to have any hope of enjoying any type of retirement. And sometimes it's mandatory. Where I work, I had to sign up for our investment plan. There's nothing I can do about it. It's a group plan, so I had to join in. So, stock markets go down, working people do suffer because their money is tied up a lot of times in these markets and in these funds. So it's working people that suffer in the end. The rich people, the corporations, they'll be fine. It's everybody else that's going to be paying the price.
Fucking Rogers.
Speaking of corporations, but yeah, no, it's you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm right now looking in regards to a couple of stocks. One in particular, one that people were commenting on today, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not feeling terrible that they're suffering based on this. Is Shopify. Shopify stocks have been suffering quite a bit from through this, which is surprising because unlike the other ones, which as Chris was mentioning, where it's a lot of the goods ones, Shopify is not. Shopify is a service. It's not really what they're targeting. They're already targeting goods in regards to these tariffs. They haven't put in the calculations how much services that's in the export. So hence where some of these things they're seeing a trade deficit. They haven't included the U.S. services being sent out to these countries. And there's a lot. I mean, from networking to everything else. But, so something like Shopify to suffer a little bit, I don't feel terrible about that. Hopefully there's not too many people's retirement investments, as Michael was mentioning, that's being tied in there, because I'm sorry, they're a crappy company when they're pretty much, hosting to, well, as Michael's hat says.
What does his hat say? You're teeny tiny on my screen. Oh, yes, indeed. I'll take a vowel.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about the markets crashing and the impacts that will be on the working class people, I think it's prudent to maybe transition the discussion into the military spending. I know that wasn't next, but it's just, it made me think of like when we think of the dollars and cents that are available to us as a resource, you know, to think how much is being spent on the military and how those stocks, I imagine, will be doing just fine. But Michael, do you want to talk about Canada's commitment to NATO spending? You can maybe give us an update and then your 2 cents as well. I'm sure you've got an opinion on that because, you know, the election, we tried to predict what would be top talking points during the election, and I don't think I had counted military spending to be in there, but if they want us to talk about it, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah, so usually military spending isn't an election issue, and we would hope that when it does become an issue, we're talking about why we should be reducing our spending and why we should be focusing our spending instead of on the military on things that people need to make their lives better, to make their material conditions better. Unfortunately, the media's kind of jumped on this and like praising the fact that we're now talking about the military, but we're talking about it in terms of we're going to be investing more money into the military. So everyone's kind of jumping onto the fact that Trump has obviously threatened annexation of Canada. He's threatened to use economic force to take us over. And so people are just using that to justify military spending, as if any amount of money we spend on the military is going to stop is going to stop the Americans from taking us over if that's what they want to do. Like if that's what they want to do, they're gonna be able to do it, regardless of how much money we spend on our military.
Yeah, that's a race we won't win.
Yeah, and like usually, you see it from the conservatives, obviously, and the liberals, but now like even the NDP has jumped in, and you know they're saying that you know they'll meet the 2% GDP threshold for our NATO spending commitments by 2032, which is extremely disappointing. You would think that a party that says it's on the left, I'd argue maybe they're not there, but you would think that a party on the left would be talking about decreasing our spending and our decreasing our commitments to NATO, and actually getting out of NATO that's where we should be. That's what we should be talking about, and you know, not increasing spending and not spending upwards of $74 billion on military jets. Although the NDP wants to make them in Canada, and that's what
that's Jagmeet's solution.
That's their big promise, right? Yeah, it's not that we don't want to spend money on that; it's just that we want to spend it in Canada. So
yeah, that's his idea of elbows up, right? We'll make the F-35 war machines.
Yeah,
it'll take us 50 years to do it, but we'll pump one out, and by then it'll be an obsolete plane. But
yeah, so like the military spending has become a real battle cry for the whole elbows up movement. And you know, just like the elbows up thing is just really infuriating on a number of things. So I was thinking today, like instead of elbows up, like fists up is what we want. Like that's what we want to be doing. But but it's part
of the Canadian identity. We have to craft that at the same time, Michael, right? Exactly. Like a certain definition of who's Canadian. So if you don't even get the reference, you're like, you're out.
Exactly. So, you know, maybe this is trying to find a silver lining to all this is that if people are talking about increasing military spending, at least there's a conversation going on that we can. There's a door open for leftists to enter to kind of talk about why it should be decreasing, why we should be spending less money on the military, and what we should be spending that money on instead. So hopefully we can get these conversations going.
For sure.
Isn't 5% crazy?
It is. It is, and it makes you wonder, like, now that, you know, Michael talked about what talking points Canadians are using, they're Trump's talking points, right? They're using this threat to their own advantage because they've always wanted to increase war spending. That's not even a new NDP position. You know, if you read through their policy book, they're always talking about we need new ships up north. We'll source it. Canadian, it's always been part of their policy. They've always been really weak on, anti-war, anti-imperialist policies, even that have been fed in through the grassroots. Like, they don't even go to that policy book. I wanted to point out like a couple what did I call? I pulled them shit quotes in my notes here. There's a Carney video that, like, we're talking about military spending like it's an election topic, but when you hear him speak about it, it's kind of ominous. I really want all those Carney fans to like watch. I think it's 3 minutes. We don't even need to watch the whole 3 minutes. Like, the first, I almost didn't get past one of those lines. He goes, rebuild, reinvest, rearm. That's the little slogan. Yeah. Joe, the video's there in the notes. Can we run that so folks can know I'm not joking? It's really
forces so that we can defend every inch of our sovereign territory.
Go right back to the beginning, will you?
While helping to support and defend.
Yeah.
Defense spending has more than doubled in the last decade, but it's not enough for the new environment.
Not enough.
And that's why today I'm announcing my plan to rebuild, reinvest, and rearm. We will expand the capabilities of the Navy with new submarines and additional heavy icebreakers to defend the North. We will deliver an unprecedented acceleration of investment in our armed forces so that we can defend every inch of our sovereign territory, while helping to support and defend our allies abroad.
The guy puts me to sleep every time I listen to him. He's got no charisma at all. This guy.
He's trying to do Obama's speaking cadence, but he doesn't actually know where to stop with the words. And so when he does it, he doesn't sound like this. He just kind of sounds like he's stopping at random points.
That's how slow the teleprompter is going.
Yeah.
But let me talk about those fucking submarines. He's talking about a submarine. So isn't this good timing that, like, all these news articles highlighted to be this week, we got a submarine back. It's been being repaired and retrofitted for 14 fucking years. 14 years at 714 or 15 million. I thought my note. Yeah. Anyway, lot over $700 million to submarine. And check this. At no point, this is a quote from a CTV, have more than 2 of Canada's 4 submarines been operational at any one time. So, I mean, like, the broader idea of military spending, Michael kind of spoke to. But if you even agree with military spending, when you see how they do it, like where all that money is actually going, it becomes harder and harder to defend, right? Like, not even an ideological level, but we only have limited funds level, and we're deciding to, Sarah was on last week talking about legislated poverty for disabled people in Canada, yet $714 million for a 14-year repair on a submarine that will probably never leave its port, or rarely leave its port. And that's really hard to justify to people. So the fact that this coincided with the Liberal promise of more spending on submarines, I thought was pretty ironic. That's hard to defend, but maybe not if nobody's anchoring that other point that Michael was making. That all the parties have kind of shifted towards, yep, it's just inevitable. We're going to have to increase. Like, nobody's commented on this 5% as I've seen, but Carney kind of leaves the door open, doesn't he? What does he say? Unprecedented acceleration in investment. And he's like not even happy we've doubled it in the past decade. So I looked to CBC I know I shouldn't have, but I did. And like their op-ed was so trash, right? Like they don't even spend one space questioning whether the spending should happen or not, the increase or even meeting our targets. They're just kind of going through everybody's point, saying like, yeah, but they're not detailing the spending items. Like, I won't believe it till I see it kind of approach. And not one of it was like, well, maybe there's like housing or other things that we could spend this money on. There was none of that from the CBC. So
what I find absolutely wild is that there's no discussion about why are we still supporting American military operations around the globe. Like, even if you'd say, okay, I like the military as is, whatever. I want to keep roughly the same spending or less or more or whatever. But why are we doing that? That's crazy. Why aren't we bringing our people home and sending them wherever you think they need, or helping patch roads or something? Anything would be better. Anything. Even if you want to build your own Canadian empire afterwards, like regroup or something. There's no point to be going out there and work. Like, my dad was in Afghanistan 3 different times for these people, and now this is how they react.
And when I look at those NATO numbers, you know, I think 1.37 is where we're at. Like, we're trying to get to 2% of our GDP that we spend on it. Does that include what we've sent to Ukraine? Like, probably not, right? Because that's
definitely
not earmarked NATO spending. But like, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars at this point now gone to Ukraine, and we don't even get credit for that? What the fuck?
A lot of it already would have been counted
that on
once,
the bill.
to be fair.
Yeah.
A lot of it would have been counted once, so it would be like double counting, but not all of it. So it is a good point.
I have another shit quote shit quote that I thought was worth highlighting, because it's from, you know, take it for what it is. It's from Goldie Hyder. That's the CEO of the Business Council of Canada. I mean, think what you want of them, but they do have the ear of politicians, and you know, they're kind of parroting the lines there, but they're you know, the NATO 2% is almost so yesterday. It's like a quote from Mean Girls, it sounds like. But then they go on, we need to catch up to where we are and where it's going. Canada's behind. We need to catch up, and we need to show we're serious. With a line like that. So, yeah, I mean, the war hawks are circling. Everybody's on board with this, but
GDP's stupid anyway.
Yeah.
You can create a GDP military store, have the military buy from it and sell to it, and buy from it and sell to it, and buy from it and sell to it. And then we're at 5% on budget. Everyone's happy, and it didn't cost the Canadian person a dime. Like, GDP is a ridiculous metric. If you actually were worried about security, you'd start measuring other things like, hey, how big of a national militia can we raise if we do want to do something if someone invades? Well, we can't at all. So it doesn't matter how much money you spend. Like, there's actual things that you need to be able to do, and no one cares.
We could build a wall. We could probably build a wall for the price of that submarine.
I just want to find a way to take, like, that big income tax money revenue that they got and just slice a bigger pie into people they know. That's all they're trying to do, to the death.
Oh, that middle tax. Yeah, go ahead.
Nobody ever asks how you're going to pay for it, right?
Not unless the NDP proposes it, or a bunch of commies propose it.
Every time we promote some type of social program, or we need to invest more money in something, it's always like, well, how are we going to pay for it? But yet, when the military wants more money, when the police want more money, no questions asked. Okay, whatever.
East Gagetown is already half my province.
And it goes over budget, too, by like hundreds of millions of dollars. They go over budget for these military contracts, and they're like, meh. They just find it. It's just like, they find this money. It's like magic. But, you know, they nickel and dime disabled people literally to death. And everyone's like, that sounds right. Carney, at least Carney's the lesser evil, right? Is that where we're still at? It feels like it on Twitter anyway, but we're not there yet. So, like, NATO spending, military spending. Our next headline there is even more military spending. At least it's not us this time, but the U.S., I mean, they've been doing this since March 5th. It's been daily bombings of Yemen. And the most recent headline, though, was there was a strike that specifically targeted water infrastructure for civilians. So that left 50,000 civilians are now without access to clean water. I mean, we're at 61 civilians dead, hundreds injured, and this is all in retaliation to the Houthis shutting off the Red Sea to Israel's ships, or ships linked to Israel, which are American ships and, you know, Maersk ships, and we know the usual suspects. So really the only folks using all of this military spending for good, you know, trying to stop the genocide and the occupation of Gaza and, you know, the West Bank, I guess, as well. But, yeah, so the U.S. has really stepped it up. So has Israel in its attacks on Gaza as well. We're back to daily bombings of both the north and the south. Just yesterday, there was another massacre upon massacre. I mean, like, it's difficult to always report on, but it's needed. The U.S. imperialism has, hit another fever pitch under Trump, but it's probably not all that much different than what we've witnessed under every U.S. president. Anybody want to chime in on how they're feeling about the bombing of Yemen or the Houthi response?
This is what they got caught on that Signal chat talking about, wasn't it? And I think they were assassinating someone, but I think it's interesting, the implications. I mean, they're doing this so that they can control the Suez Canal, and the people in Yemen are fighting essentially a war on behalf of everyone against the U.S. by trying to disrupt it. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people in Yemen with a lot of varying reasons for doing what they're doing, a lot of which I might not agree with, or methods, or anything. But there's also people who absolutely see this as a way to attack U.S. trade supremacy. And the U.S. admitted in their Signal chat that the reason they're doing it isn't because they need to secure their own trade, because they don't get trade through the Suez Canal. It's so they can control European trade and could, charge them a fee like a troll on a bridge for going through the canal. And so the Yemeni are fighting for Europe as well, which is wild.
Well, they're not. They would never.
They're fighting in their best interests against the current U.S. administration. Absolutely. They're not doing it on behalf of them. They're doing it on behalf of their own varying self-interest. But
I'm glad you brought up that Signal, though, because you know what pissed me off about that? Like, obviously, mock them. That's so, it shows their ineptitude at the job. Like, this is what happens when you just, hire your highest donors or biggest retweeters. I don't know how he picked his cabinet or all of these folks, but idiots are running the country. But
I think my best term I've heard for it was a DUI hired.
Yes, yeah. I do. I'll chuckle at that, but fucking liberals and Democrats, honestly, I don't have Cory Booker on the list of things to talk about, but it's all part of that. They get so upset at this leak. This is the only time the American public are even talking about Yemen, and it's not because they're bombing a sovereign nation, or any of these important issues that are brought up when we talk about this. They are just solely focused on the fact that they leaked that information, and now that they're bombing water infrastructure, again, it's like crickets. Democrats are okay with that because at least nobody knew exactly who planned it and when and on what platform. And that's just so typical of telling us who the lesser evil is, those are the good guys, the folks that are all just worked up about it not happening in a skiff, and that's really kind of hopeless for American politics. I mean, Canadians are not faring much better. I mean, Michael, your company not included there, but it's just not talking about some of these things in the right way. One of the points I have here, Yemen is already in a famine, a catastrophic humanitarian situation already, and still directing resources towards this. And think of it what you may, and that's incredible. But also the use of water as a weapon, targeting the water infrastructure. We've seen that as well, right, in Gaza. So the parallels there are sickening, but they are all too obvious at the same time. So. And
I was also thinking the same things you were thinking, Jessa, about the fact that this is what people are talking about, some stupid leak instead of the innocent people who are being killed. But you'd almost think if there were more intelligent people in the White House, it would be a genius move to leak this on purpose, to do the Signal leak so that people are talking about it instead of the bad stuff you're doing overseas for no reason except for protecting protecting capital and things like that. So
That
yeah,
narrative
it's a
almost,
good
yeah,
example. It's a
yeah.
good example of just the crap and all the shit that America does all around the world. And with and Canada's complicit in our support for all these efforts as well. So
Yeah, I was going to say that narrative like normalized it, right? Because it was just the afterthought of that a residential building was destroyed to get one person, right? They had one target. They acknowledged he was visiting his girlfriend and that they completely collapsed a residential building. And like that wasn't the topic. So it's like, can that ever be a topic again of Yemen? Because nobody grabbed it. It was assumed. It was greenlit by the American public when they chose to be fascinated by just that part, right? So yeah, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that they aren't particularly upset about the water infrastructure being hit.
It's important to lay out people's motives. Otherwise, they'll tell you what their own motives are, and that's usually how you get, oh, they're madman or they're evil religious fundamentalists. So when you tie it to not to say, oh, look how much it affects the West or something like that, but when you tie it to why are they actually doing that? It's because evil is banal and they want to control global trade. That's why they're doing it. They're not bombing the other side of the Arabian Peninsula near as hard, because that's not the side where the like they're evil because these people are in their way. And there's a lot of people on the other side who know they have the leverage to actually fight back, where a lot of people are in areas where if the US turns on you, like we feel in Canada, you have not a lot of leverage. There's not a lot you can do.
Yeah, no. Well, that's not true, right? Because the second half of our show is how people can gain leverage, right? As just not through your typical avenues. I don't want to sell the powerless point all too much, but anybody else got anything to say on like American imperialism before we kind of go a little bit more domestic? We tried to go international and then draw it in a little bit. We're going to move on to the Maplehurst video, but Joe, do you want to kind of intro that topic? I mean, the video surfaced. I don't really want to show the video. I mean, if you want to show the headline, but don't run the video.
Yeah, I'm not going to run
Thank
the
you.
videos here. But so in this particular case here, it has to do with a shocking strip search by Ontario jail guards in a riot gear on this particular offender. And this doesn't shock me too much. Again, for those who know me, I've been tracking quite a bit in regards to incarceration and jails, as I have a friend right now currently in the system. And I read the article quickly this morning too as I was going through it. So I don't even care about the charge. And the reason why I say that is that they've been charged, they've been convicted, they're being sentenced. So there is a certain responsibility in regards to incarceration that should be required of the guards, and guards had treatment and whatnot. And this one is just absolutely, it's horrifying, but also not shocking for myself. So the person was given a lenient sentence after a video came out where the person was, strip searched aggressively while the guards were in riot gear, and then left pretty much in their underwear for 19 hours. And for what purpose? For what reason?
I want to add a few details to that. Like, there's reports that they pumped in cold air during that time. That's not anything that folks were able to prove because, they don't take the word of inmates. But that is what the lawyers for some of these folks were saying. They pumped in cold air. They used tear gas and pepper spray. They had their hands zip tied behind their back in a very uncomfortable position as well. So, so I just wanted to throw those details in there.
No, absolutely. And because they are absolutely, as it's marked here, just previously, multiple inmates were herded with hands zip tied. As lawyers alleged, cold air was pumped in. Incident was captured on internal circuit cameras, but the videos have not been shown to public. cited prisoners. Toronto Star reported that they cited prisoners as saying they had been beaten and pepper sprayed. So, when you're incarcerated and under custody, you're pretty much at the mercy of these guards. And for this to go unchecked, like, this is the biggest one. You know, these are the guards go unchecked. One of the other things that also I was reading into this article here, which was about OPSU, talking about how these, the Maplehurst detention center is understaffed. They're not wrong, and it's not limited to just Maplehurst. All of them are, and there's ramifications to this right now. In a lot of these places, because they're understaffed, and this was a common thing during COVID, but also after COVID, it hasn't been corrected. It forces the inmates, when there's not enough staff to handle all the inmates, it forces the system to go into lockdown, which means the inmates are no longer allowed to get out and have their exercises required or to do the activities that they were required to do. They're just kept in the cage. And extended period of time in cage, we've got the reports. We know what happens when you keep a person locked up for too long into isolation. Bad things start to occur in the mind. Long-term bad things.
That OPSU statement pissed me off a lot. I saw Michael shaking his head there because I expected better of OPSU. I'm used to shitting on some members of labor. We're critical of everyone. At least I'm critical of everyone. Some people don't like that, but OPSU, I mean, that sounds like Smokey's OPSU. Like OPSU, I've talked to some locals that had like huge problems. They weren't very well represented and whatnot, but we've talked about JP Hornick so many times on the show, expecting better. This was under their reign. I mean, it wasn't them that issued the statement, but they pretended that they did like an investigation. This is before the public saw the video too, when they issued this statement, but 8 months after the fact, plenty of time. And not only do they, like Joe said, everything they say about underfunding is true and like leading to poor conditions and stressful conditions and whatever. All true, but they absolutely say nothing about the culture of violence and having to address it or anything like that. They don't let their workers take one lick of responsibility, and that's what gives unions a bad name. When there's no repercussions. Not to mention these are like, well, I don't know. Maybe I'd like to ask Michael's opinion here. No cops in labor. Does this count? I mean, most people would say. Yes.
Yeah. For me, it does count. Like OPSU should not be representing corrections officers. Like, that's my thoughts. And like, instead of defending these officers, OPSU should be talking about the over incarceration rates and the people who are being sent to prison unnecessarily, and the racial makeup of the people who are going to jail. Things like that. That's what we need our unions to be talking about. And just about the whole idea about, politicians like Doug Ford they're talking about building more prisons in Ontario and things like that. And like OPSU will go right along with it, right? Because it benefits their members to have more prisons, because that means more jobs for corrections officers and more money for them to do that job. So, it's the one thing I've always been disappointed with the union like OPSU in the fact that they do represent corrections officers. I think it's a real black mark on the union movement in general.
Yeah, there's some provincial. I bet you did know this, but there's a provincial federations of labor, not Ontario, that include cops, like real cops. I think that's astonishing. I mean, I think Nova Scotia is one of the offenders there, but it is kind of fits with their history. But yeah, no, definite contradiction of values and goals there, or at least what we think their goals should be. That was really disappointing because, like Joe, like this is not just Maplehurst. This is not really a surprise to people to see this behavior. But to get the video is what got people talking about it, because this was back in December 2023. You have OPSU issuing a statement 8 months later. That article that Joe brought up with the reduced sentence was even, almost that was quite a bit ago as well. But it wasn't until we got to see the video that it got the airplay that it needed. And I, as I'm trying to learn more about this facility or this event, I find a strep, like this crazy strep outbreak in the facility that spread like crazy, went untreated, led to 2 deaths. And, although that does speak to OPSU's claims, and validity of the conditions there, it more speaks to Michael's point that, abolition of these kinds of institutions is where we should be leading. And
this particular area is not. This particular area is not uncommon to have these kind of things. Not just the strep throat one. Strep's been moving around the entire facility for quite a while, and they're even concerned about it being a antibiotic resistant version of strep right now going on. And particularly in a close quarters kind of place like this, it's not uncommon. At one point, somebody was mentioning that there is a potential of fasciitis going across there. Which is a whole different.
You mean the necrotizing?
Necrotizing fascia? Yeah, necrotizing. So, which is even more concerning in regards to, like, this is now going to be a serious health crisis if this is not addressed. And again, there's a lot of references, particularly by inmates and by other groups that are commenting in regards to guards are always a little bit lax in regards to providing assistance or helping when there's something going on in regards to either from identifying and allowing medical attention being provided to inmates, to even medication being handed out correctly and on time, to so that when these kinds of situations occur where you've got some sort of medical condition going around in a very close quarter place, a lax and slow response from the guards can make something very dangerous, just ravage an entire area rather quickly. And this is a horrifying thing. Like, at least for me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not that hard to have living conditions where you don't, this stuff doesn't happen. Jail or not, need for jail or not. Just think about what type of living situation you need to be in where your flesh is dying and you can't stop strep throat outbreaks. Come on. These people should have better medical access than most Canadians right now, because there should be at least one medical professional that goes, oh wow, strep throat, that's really easy to deal with. Everyone take this. What do I know?
Well, I think same with our healthcare and our education system, there's a push to defund them or strip them of humanity and usefulness and make them a disaster. And enough of these stories, then they start to use these headlines that they have manufactured themselves through underfunding to push for private solutions, right? Private prisons, private schools, private healthcare, because look, it's broken. It's awful. We got to fix these. They'll become humanists all of a sudden. They'll be so concerned about the welfare of these prisoners or these inmates. Prisoners, really, a lot of them don't even have charges. What was it, 80%, Joe? Do you already 80%. Say that?
80% of the incarcerated people in Ontario are not convicted. They are still waiting for their trials. And yet somehow we need to keep these people housed.
And that trend is just going, right? Because we're starting to criminalize everything under the sun, right? So homelessness and drug use out in the open and all these other things that will put you in prison. So it's, those numbers are just going to go up, and those potential solutions more likely to show themselves. They haven't quite said it yet, but we're getting there.
And I think Jess is right, and I wouldn't be surprised within the next year or two that Doug Ford starts to kind of dangle the whole privatized jail system forward.
I've been saying it too.
I don't know if Joe, you've been saying it. Yeah, I think now that he's got another 4 years to do some stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts using the fact that we're dealing with these terrorists. We got to save money on this, so let's look at privatizing our jail system. I wouldn't be surprised.
You've got Pierre Poilievre, who's been talking about jail, not bail. You had the liberal leader who's talking about cracking down on repeat offenders and having a whole different bail system separate for them. Again,
Don't
not
forget
even going into the
protesters.
fact- yeah, exactly, and not even going into the entire. Is there some constitutional issues in regards to what you're proposing? Not even going to that. Even if, let's say they do succeed in this, all this is going to add to an already overpacked. And again, I'm not exaggerating by saying prisons are currently overpacked in Ontario. There's more people in there than there should be in capacity, and they want to add more people into an already existing system. Yeah, this is going to be very much like, oh, look, we got just all this criminal problem that, yeah, we're going to have to get some private prisons here. There's no way we can scale this publicly. We have to get the private systems in here to come in here just to take the load off. And they're going to do it so efficiently because, it's private. It's always more efficient when it's private.
He's being facetious in case anyone doesn't... can't read tone.
Listen to this on the drive home or something. They're like, wait, what did he just say?
Yeah.
I apologize to those listening. My eye rolls sometimes do not.
It was a good
come
eye
out
roll.
in auditory, yeah, doesn't come out in an auditory way. So, but
Yeah, so we're talking about like putting more people in prisons and the conditions there. We're looking to the U.S. for just a second here, and I'm saying, this week we find out. Well, a few stories kind of caught my eye, but the one everyone will already know is our dear Luigi. We need like a sound every time we talk about Luigi to play. But Luigi obviously.
I can find a Mario sound.
Yeah, we're talking about the gentleman facing charges of murder of the United Health CEO, and U.S. prosecutors. Well, the U.S. Attorney General asked the prosecutors, or probably demanded, probably wasn't asking, to seek the death penalty for him. They are classifying this as an act of political violence. Now, they haven't used the term domestic terrorism, I don't think, officially to describe this. That is a term they are throwing around a lot. I would like to unpack that a little bit, as well as what we think of. Seeking the death penalty for a murder case that they've made stakes in federally. Trump has promised to go after the death penalty in this case and in other cases. So I don't think we're surprised by this move. But, it comes the same week that we also find out that they're classifying attacks on Tesla dealerships as domestic terrorism as well, and now seeking sentences of up to 20 years in prison for folks who vandalized some of these dealerships. Obviously that's a huge concern to us, especially here on Blueprints of Disruption. We encourage actions of this nature. We share them a lot. We have the perpetrators on our show from time to time, maybe. And so...
For legal reasons, maybe not.
It's too late, buddy. The cat is out of the bag. I give him like a week to retract any statements before I post the episode. But folks we know are doing this stuff around Canada as well, right? We have seen Last Generation take ownership of at least 3 actions against Tesla dealerships, very similar, pink paint everywhere and whatnot, and they are facing mischief charges with crazy bail conditions that we've talked about many times on the show. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you really should subscribe to the podcast. But this isn't just an American phenomenon. We haven't seen prison sentences suggested like that as of yet, but that doesn't say we won't.
I just want to say this car that we're seeing right here is going to be receiving far more justice than any woman that's ever been assaulted in the U.S. or even murdered. Like, it's just insane where the cars and the vehicles and the property have more rights and more protections and more justice than any person in the States, except a billionaire.
And it's quite obvious why this is happening, right? It's like you almost don't have to say it.
Say it, Michael.
They're just protecting their friends, right? Like they're protected. They're trying to tell their rich buddies who own corporations, who are CEOs of corporations, that don't worry, we're here to protect you. as the ruling class does, right? That's what they do. They protect those interests. And like Jessa said, like it's gonna come to Canada eventually. Like just hypothetically speaking, if someone was to take out Galen Weston, you know that the establishment would be like Doug Ford would be up there saying, like, this person needs to go to jail for the rest of their lives, like that kind of
He'd
stuff.
have a national funeral, like just it would be awful.
Yeah, there'd be a state funeral for this
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, that's
and
what I mean.
All the politicians would be saying that the perpetrator needs to be thrown in jail or worse, and everybody would just be going along with it. But yet, somebody else is murdered, or somebody on disability, decides to end their life because they can't support themselves anymore. They're living in poverty. Nothing gets said about that. Like, it's the whole idea of like what's acceptable, what isn't acceptable in our society, and obviously the ruling class is the one that determines it, and a lot of people just go along with it. But it just shows the whole contradiction that we're facing with these kind of issues.
I do like how they're openly declaring class war, though, at least, so everyone can know that they're, capitals on one side and everybody else fighting them is essentially a domestic terrorist. It does help us draw those class lines that are sometimes really blurred for people who end up just fighting amongst each other, right? Like, we're just as guilty. We fight the working class right, and the working class right fights the working class left, and meanwhile capital is just like laughing at us all. Meanwhile, but also the social construct of crime. What is crime? People often roll their eyes when they hear that, but then when you break it down with something like this, like what people can get away with from an elected position or as a corporation, and with no face. They have faces. They have names. Luigi found one, right? So it's like they're not criminals, not at all. But those are victims. It's like the Israeli narrative all over again. But I want to talk about the domestic terrorism label that they're using more and more. They've labeled a lot of drug cartels as terrorists, right? And this isn't just rhetoric. I mean, it is rhetoric, but it has legal implications too, right? It opens up the possibility of how the government can respond, right? They can suppress a lot more rights, as we've seen, with the way ICE is just rounding people up and sending them off to El Salvador. And it allows them to do a lot more, even if they are in another country, right? If they make the case that Mexico is harboring these cartels, or Venezuela, it's another foreign policy point. Weapons of mass destruction is what they're calling fentanyl, right? So it's these silly quips that we take from them, and we think it's hyperbole, right? They're setting the stage, right? Sometimes they're setting the legal framework. But one thing I read about domestic terrorism right now is there is no legal framework. And at one point you'd be like, oh, so there's really no like domestic terrorism charge specifically, right? There's no laws around it. But that means like it's all open to interpretation, right? It's like, was this a politically motivated crime? And that, if you start talking about class warfare as being politically motivated, then there's a lot of things that we do that explicitly target banks, target billionaires. Like we say, we want to cost you money, right? And Greenpeace got sued for doing that. And people are getting sued for costing oil companies money and stuff like that. So they're really criminalizing a lot of the tools or even the language that we use around like fighting this class war. So it's not just their friends, but I mean, I know you meant the class, but it's not just like Elon. It's not just like, oh, we'll protect Tesla dealerships. Believe me, if we decided to target Ford dealerships all of a sudden, they would target it the same way if we meant it politically, right? And yeah, I don't know. It's like, I heard this argument, and from a very respected person, Professor David McNally. Actually, no, sorry. I think it was John Clark. John Clark made the argument that this isn't quite fascism that we're experiencing because we still have unions. Like there's still a labor movement. But I don't know, Michael. Michael, you want to I don't know. I respect John Clark and his opinion, but the more and more I see and the less and less I see response from labor on this is a little disheartening. Especially like UAW obviously doesn't give a shit about Canadian auto workers, and the list goes on.
Yeah, getting into the debate about whether this is fascism, whether it isn't fascism, I don't know where I land on that, and I'm not sure I don't think it's, for me personally, it won't change what I think is the goal and what is the kind of the strategy behind what we're doing as in terms of activists. There's a lot to unpack in terms of like what does fascism mean? What's the definition of it? Things like that. Because you can look at it, you can use the traditional Mussolini definition where it's corporatism. It's a dictatorship, or it's in the interests of the corporations. And then you can say, well, that's exactly where we are right now, for sure. But then you can look at certain freedoms that we have in terms of, like what John Clark was saying about unionization and things of that, like that. So for me, it can be a bit of a distraction for the left to be debating these things when we need to be focusing our attention on the people that are affecting our lives and the class that are attacking us on a daily basis.
Yeah, like I think, what definition it fits isn't important as long as you're still focused on it. Like you're not like, oh, we're not there yet, like we'll be fine. We still have
I think in that case, you're kind of diminishing what it means to people. And if people feel that they're living in a situation that seems to them like fascism, then we need to recognize that and try to understand why people are feeling that way, and what the conditions are around them that are making them feel like that, and how we can address it. And so, to me, that's the most important part. We just I don't think it's good for people to be kind of trying to correct people's political take on it. Like if that's what people want to call it, then call it that. If they don't want to call it, don't. But it's what it is, and when what's being forced upon us, that's really what matters most.
I think any time people start bringing up domestic terrorism, it starts to bring up thoughts or discussions about different types of power. So you have legal power, but you also have de facto power. And in Canada, you're seeing more and more that like what people can get away with or can do, as opposed to what the rules are supposed to be or the laws are supposed to be. Like we have some pretty generous precedents. Like when people actually get court cases, like there's some surprising rulings in Canada. But everyone knows that if you have to deal with some government institution or bureaucrat or police officer or, God forbid, a capitalist, you're not going to get very far because they actually control the levers of power. This is what we're at risk with here. In Canada, the framework does not exist like in the U.S., just like Guantanamo you. But they don't do that in Europe either. They just extrajudicially kill you. And that's how other countries deal with these issues. The U.S. is kind of unique in that they use their legal framework as a way to like push through totalitarian, like de facto power. Most countries, they say they have this flowery way to protect their people. And then if they really have to get away with it, you have to like really dig deep into the news cycles to figure out what happened.
I was talking about some of these stories, like of prison sentences and whatnot, and my partner was just, coming from the angle that they're trying to frighten protesters. And of course this is true, right? Of course this is like meant to silence and intimidate, but I think people need to remember or view it, especially if you're not doing these actions yourself or even contemplating it, they're actually testing you and what your response to this fascism or not fascism is, right? What is the public's? What is their threshold? What will they take and allow? And right now, it's not looking good, people. Like we're not feeling the pushback. Like I even said, I'm like, well, what are you actually going to do about it? Like, you can complain to me, and I will vent with you, and that is cathartic, and we can build on that. But then, what are you going to do? Right? And if the answer is nothing, then their little test bubble, it was a success. That means you can roll it out, right? This is how corporations work. This is the test market that they're running. And everyone's just kind of like, neither here or there. And not many, and then you've got the people that are actually cheering this on, right? Which is really fucking ironic. The folks of free speech and freedom and all of that are just, I mean, I know they're also law and order crew. So I understand them supporting tough on crime approaches or whatnot, but the whole suppression of free speech is kind of ironic coming from them, like students getting rounded up for protesting, and they're just like, yep, there's limits to these freedoms all of a sudden. They're absolute when it needs to be applied to them, but fucking hypocrites. But let's move on to the election updates, though, because all of this talk, how does it all trickle down to the federal campaign that's happening right now? And every time we have an election, we're told it's the most important of our times. It's the most important of our times. Are we feeling that this time around?
I think for a lot of people, they've fallen into the trap that this is the most important election. There are people that I know where I live who have totally jumped on the Carney bandwagon. They're choosing to ignore basically everything about this guy. The fact that he was heavily involved in corporate landlords, like that he's an investment banker that's worth millions, that he represents a party who's been complicit in the genocide of Palestinians for years now. Like, people who are in the streets with me are now, they're all not even just voting for Carney, but like actively
defending
promoting him. And the threat of Pierre Poilievre is very real. And there is even though like people like to say that the liberals and conservatives are two sides of the same coin, that's true to a pretty significant degree, but there are some differences between like policies in terms of maybe like social issues. I think the people would agree that the liberals are a bit better on than the conservatives, and there's things Pierre Poilievre have said that is very scary in terms of like the labor movement. I'm not sure why they've been so silent on the fact that Pierre Poilievre's talked about right to work legislation and things like that could just decimate unions in our country. So those things like that that are a bit different, although the liberals have been terrible on labor as well. They're certainly not. They don't shy away from getting workers back on the job when they're supposed to be in a legal strike position. So people have really like a lot of people have, and you can see it in the polls, right? Like the NDP is basically on its way to being decimated this election. I think you're seeing they're just going to try to hold on to the seats that they think that they can hold on to. So they may get a handful of seats, but that's about it. And so that opens up a whole other point about why can't we have a viable left parliamentary party in this country? Like, I know Jessa's the expert on this, so I'm not. She knows more about this with the NDP than most people do, obviously from her experiences. But it's kind of a sad situation we're in right now, where people are excited about choosing somebody like Mark Carney to be our prime minister, potentially with a majority government for the next 4 years. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Like, I can deal with the holding your nose mentality. Like, I can cope with it. right? I don't like it. Like, I'll hold my nose and I'll vote Liberal. But yeah, that's not what we're experiencing, is it, Michael? It's like, I've read his book. Environmentalists are convinced that he is the answer, right? Like, he sold himself very well. He's not doing very well on the campaign trail. But, I even had healthcare advocates come at me and say, like, this isn't helpful what you're doing, criticizing him right now. And this week he's just like, fuck pharmacare. That's what you get. You get diabetes and birth control? Is that, like, it's been so long and I don't use it. That's pretty much what we got. That's it. He's like, don't even come at me for more, right? And the Conservatives are going to have decent amount of seats, so it's not like the NDP is going to have any fucking sway here. So that's it. Like, the NDP pretending like they're going to fight him and work with him. Not with 3 seats, you're not. Not with 4 seats. He's not going to give a shit what you have to say at all. You won't be able to moderate him at all. If he ends up with a minority government with the Conservatives holding, the balance, it's going to be they will be indistinguishable, and he'll say it's because he has to keep the government in play and whatnot, or placate. A lot of it will be done to placate Trump as well, to stave off the tariffs and endless concessions that only the working class will have to pay for. But it'll
be interesting to see. Like, obviously Arnie and Polyev are talking tough right now because they're running in the election. Yeah. But it's interesting to see how their language changes like on April 29th. I think there'll be a lot of everyone. All of a sudden, it'll be, oh, we have to work with the Americans now. Like, it's in our best interest to work with them. Not like, and they won't be doing this to kind of defend Canadian workers or anything like that. It's just to keep keep Canadian corporations afloat, obviously. But I think like, to me, this election points to the fact that we really need to be focused on a real strong strategy after the election. As much as that's going to have the election for sure matters, but at the end of the day, it's what we do on April 29th and beyond that's really going to matter here. Like, we can't let whoever wins bring in austerity, privatize our services even more, deny us proper farmer care, end the dental care program, things like that, things that are obviously not good enough to begin with, but it can be even worse after the fact. So
yeah. I got a funny one for you, Jessa.
Okay, I'm really gonna laugh, or am I gonna get irate?
No, I think you'll find it funny.
Okay.
So I opened up my phone yesterday and I got a message from one of the local candidates here in New Brunswick.
NDP.
They want to pay me to collect signatures for them.
They're running out of time.
How far are they fallen? Oh yeah. Because so 2019 they got 9%, and then Jugmeat didn't show up for the 2021 one. We got 12%.
Provincially, you're talking about results?
This is federal results.
But in New Brunswick? Okay.
Yeah, in the province. And so they should be on the track because the Greens collapsed in the province. There's votes to pick up, and they seats to win even, because yeah, but they now want me to go and of course no, I mean, I think I just went on a diatribe about how anyone who wants to right now, it's the perfect time to replace the NDP. They had a mass exodus of leftists over the past, since Tom Mulcair basically, and then now they're having a huge exodus of all of the people who did that to go to the Liberals. It's crazy. There's nothing left. There's way more people who think about the NDP than there is anyone who's working on the NDP who actually is trying to make it succeed. The only path forward for them, and this is a very real thing, is Jugmeat loses his seat, a much better MP retains their seat, and that person can be leveraged into being a better leader. But
Stop.
the idea that the party is so captured from a institutional level that the only thing that can happen is election wise they kind of screw themselves to where Nikki Ashton's one of two people sitting in there, and it's better than Jugmeat, but you're still frigged. I mean, that party has so much corruption built into it, and so many people that it's miffed who would rather not be a part.
Yeah, no, stop giving them tips on how to fix themselves. We don't want them. We had a whole discussion that I'm waiting to drop at the right time. I feel like we're gonna have to probably redo it post-election because it's gonna be a different story all of a sudden. But when I talked with Chris about it being a controlled opposition. At this point, it's a fucking detriment to us when they're talking about spending money on military, right? When they are just ratcheting over the Overton window themselves, right? They're doing it. They are a problem. And it's an institutional rot that's not worth just finding a new figurehead for, right? It's got to be completely restructured. I shared an episode in the chat there. It's my discussion with the Atlantic Regional Communists. It's almost my go-to drop when people are like, what do? We should rebuild. We should find new ways. And I'm just here's this discussion. Chew on it. See where you come out the other end. Because it's folks that are disgruntled from Greens and NDPs, and they've formed a party, but they're not really interested in elections, right? Because, they're intersectional communists, and their focus is on decolonization more, getting to not to take over the colonial state, but to dismantle it. And without adequate resources, they just feel like going into elections just isn't for them, right? It's not what they're trying to do right now, but that doesn't mean they're not trying to, they don't have the same goals as us in the end. So I just encourage folks to listen to that. But I have a funny story too, right? Joe knows a little bit of the story. I mean, folks might have been listening to as well. So, and it speaks to, paying people to collect signatures. And side note to that, if you're a candidate and you, with all that time, you really can't find 100 people to sign your sheet, you might just want to reconsider the whole campaign, right? It's going to really be hard to mount a campaign and get votes. And if you don't have the resources to even do that. So if the party hasn't given you the resources to do that from the start, I mean, red flag, right? That's a huge red flag, but it's probably not unique to the other parties as well. They probably all do it. But earlier this week...
We don't do it.
No, the Communist Party... The Communist Party of Canada, they get it the good old-fashioned way. You go to the supermarket or where people congregate, you go door to door, start going door to door anyway, and just try to get signatures. Even if they don't like communists, be like, don't you think I should participate, right? Don't you think that's part of our democracy? And they'll sign it. They'll sign it eventually. But yeah, if folks can't get on the ballot, so they always try to run a full slate. Time is ticking. We're only going to find out at the end whether they do or not, but it's not looking good. A lot of people are still looking on Elections Canada website and have no idea who's running in their riding for the NDP, if that's who you want to vote for. I'm neither here or there on that, but resources. So they put out a call online and because they've depleted their grassroots because they're pieces of shit, right? So nobody wants to do free labor. But they put out a call going, creators, we need you. Jugmeat's going to all these cities. They list them. They give their 613 phone number, not even a 1-800 number. They don't have a fucking toll-free number for these folks. They put up their actual 613 number. Call us. Call the social media team. We need your help. Basically, they want to use other creators' platforms to share videos on TikTok, on IG, or whatever, and just... because they've got nobody. They probably got nobody showing up at the rallies. They're traveling Jugmeat all over the country. Nobody's showing up. If they do, it's not getting any traction. It's not getting in the news, so it's for naught, right? Jugmeat needs to be knocking on doors in Burnaby or wherever the fuck he's decided to run because his riding's been split up. Burnaby Central, I think, instead of, they parade him everywhere. So they got to make it worthwhile. Obviously, I tweet out, I'm like, anybody who freaking answers this call is getting an instant unfollow from me. Don't. Nobody listens to me, but right? Isn't that the story of all our lives? Nobody listens to me. So creators obviously signed up, and one creator really got burned. I was watching her TikTok live this morning. She's trying to unpack it in her head. Like, why would they do this? They bring her on, then they start slamming her as a sex worker. Anne McGrath issues a statement how she's disrespected Holocaust survivors because she gave like a basic high school level explanation, but she dared compare the actions of Israel to the actions of the Nazis, right? And under the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, you cannot do that. And obviously the NDP is operating under that fucking definition, even though they pretended to fight it. Anyway, so they just throw her under the bus publicly, right? She creates a video, it goes viral with Jagmeet, and the next day people are coming down on her, and yeah, they just threw her under the bus. And I'm like, we've seen this a million times over in almost every province, especially when it has to do with Palestine and Israel, right? And I just thought it was so funny that they're like, hey, come on, get on the bus with Jagmeet so we can drive you over with it. Like, it was just, and I felt so bad because it speaks to so many of those stories where people are so hopeful. They look to this party as the only possibility of change. They're trying to find all these ways. Like, even Chris, he knows better. And he's sitting there going, well, maybe if they had Nikki and they could do this, because he wants it to succeed. Like, we need a workers' party.
To be clear, I'm strategizing. I don't want them to succeed. They betrayed me. I hate them. I want them to fail more than anyone. I give out strategies because I could do that for any party. I could tell you how Pierre Poilievre should be turning things around
Don't
right
you dare.
now. Doesn't mean I think he should.
Fair enough.
It's something that we should all do because otherwise you won't have a strategic mind, and when it's time for you to do something, you won't do it successfully.
Fair enough. I'm sorry, Chris, for implying that you were cheering for a resurgence of the party.
Yeah.
I should have known better. I should have known better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought, stop, people. Like, stop making it this canon event you have to go through. I'm in this girl's chat going like, I can tell you everything you need to know. She seems so puzzled, and I wanted to just get her on the phone for 5 minutes, be like, here's why. Like, Jennifer Howard is Jagmeet's chief of staff. She is a Zionist. It's not a secret. Anne McGrath is a Zionist. Like, she believes the state of Israel should have every right to defend itself, that it should exist as an ethno-state, blah, blah, blah. Like, people being surprised that the NDP or Zionists are not paying attention. They're not paying attention, and this frustrates me because these are creators that are actually talking about politics all the time, and they're being targeted by the NDP to spread this information. So they're using this platform that they've built up to convince people to vote for a party that they don't even understand themselves. And it's not their fault. Like, I didn't know either. That's why I created that whole podcast series. It's like 15 episodes now or something. I don't know. It's like Inside the NDP. And we've just gone through every mechanism that they use to suppress, the grassroots, to suppress socialism explicitly, to become neoliberals, right? To become the new liberal, red, orange. Everyone has a cute little name for what they're doing. But, Wab Kinew, everyone's enamored with Wab Kinew right now. He is an open Zionist too. He does events for B'nai B'rith all the time. He's spoken emphatically about the right to defend for Israel. They think because he let in a few refugees to the province and patted them on the head for a photo op that he is the savior. So this week, Jagmeet's doing the rounds. He's posing with all the premiers and he's using their clout to up his. But someone posted, I wish I'd have shared it. Joshua Hind, I think, posted just 4 photos, I guess, of Jagmeet and Wab, and he said, this looks like a passing of the baton kind of moment, a prelude to a changing of the guard. And you look through the photos, and it kind of is, like, Jagmeet's not smiling, it looks kind of tense. They went with these photographs, it's kind of strange. They don't give off a buddy-buddy vibe or a we're gonna win anything vibe. It does seem like it's kind of setting a tone there for the NDP, because yes, I imagine Jagmeet has to go. They saw Carney do a rebrand. They're like, wow, look at that. The Liberals were decimated in the polls, and all they did was they got a shiny new face, and look where they are now. So I wouldn't be surprised if they follow that. But anyone want to hit on strategic voting before we go to the disruptive updates? I saw just another on strategic voting, that's smartvote.ca. I think that's the name of the site, smartvote.ca. The creator for that was on this girl's live that I was talking about earlier, Jessica Wetz, this woman's live, sorry. And he talks about being in their Discord. I mean, this was public, so I'm like sharing it. He said it publicly. He's somehow on the NDP Discord still, where staff there and, you know, the coordinators are actively discouraging candidates and creators that are working with them from sharing that. Like, not even just in the videos that they're creating, but like, don't share it as in your bio link. Don't promote strategic voting at all, because it often shorthands the NDP. You know, encourages you not to vote for them in some ridings. So that must be frustrating for you, Michael, to hear people talk about strategic voting as a candidate for, you know, one of the, can I call you a fringe party? Is that an insult? Or you kind of want to be on the fringe, right?
We're a small party with big ideas. That's what we.
There we go. I like
call
that.
ourselves. But yeah, like obviously, like the Communist Party approaches elections a lot different than the other parties, right? Like we enter them because in a lot of ways, like this is where people, this is when they're interested in politics. So it's a chance for us to talk to people about the issues that matter, and what we could do to kind of help people where they are right now, you know, prior to hopefully eventually a revolution where working people take over. But yeah, I suspect that I may become a victim of strategic voting in some ways, even though I'm not naive. I know I don't have a chance of winning, although I'm running to win. I'm not naive. But yeah, there are people who like would say, "Oh yeah, I support you, but you know, I'm really afraid of Pierre Poilievre, so I'm going to vote for the Liberals this time around." So like it's to me, the strategic voting, I can understand why people think it makes sense. They're looking at short-term interests, but they don't recognize, like they've done studies on this, and the long-term effects of strategic voting is just incredibly negative. Like it moves everything to the right over time, like that more than you think. So it like nobody like it's not a strategy that I would ever actually, you know, be engaged in, even when if I was with another party. Yeah, because I firmly believe, just from who I am as a person, that you need to vote for what you believe in. I think that's key, because that's what you're going to be fighting for after the election too. Like you can't to me, you can't leave it kind of at the sides. But like you know, like I said, that I do understand why people do it. People get afraid, and you know, certain people, like there will be people who are really afraid of a Pierre Poilievre government and what it might mean for their lives. And so I can see why people might choose that. But I think it's something that you have to do on an individual basis. I think strategic voting campaigns in general are very detrimental to democracy as we know it in this country.
Yeah. With strategic voting, I like exactly what you said, is that there's no long-term strategy to it. It's in marketing, you have these terms where once you convince people to say it, you've already won. Even when the left talks about strategic voting and says about how bad it is, well, you're still using the term strategic voting. People go, well, it is strategic. No. It's not.
That's what my comment was. Like,
really
strategy's
not.
Doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Yeah. It's not in your best interest, logically, ever. In Canada, for one, political parties often get funding based on every vote they get. So, like,
not anymore.
And political parties are nonsense. So, if you just look at it from a riding to riding level and a personal ethical level, if you weren't the person to run, then you at least owe it to yourself, regardless of party, to figure out who's running, who you think is the person who should actually be the member of parliament for your riding, and to vote for that person. It could be based on whether you think they're a good person or that they have a really coherent knowledge of your political beliefs and are going to represent you well. I don't know. But if you're not the person running, this idea that you should vote for the third best person in your riding because you figured something out. No, you didn't even get those 100 signatures. Like, you're not the person running. Like, vote for the person running who's the most ethical in your mind, like to vote for, not this short-term nonsense.
It's I mean, this particular election has been one that I feel when I saw strategic voting. I mean, I remember seeing strategic voting quite a few times, even during the last Ontario election here, where it was pushed out in regards to smart voting and strategic voting. Unfortunately, it didn't succeed because we still have Doug Ford. And so there's that. But I mean, every time I think about strategic voting, and two things. One, fear. People are doing strategic voting not because it's going for the better choice, but they're afraid of the terrible choice. That's kind of a weird, terrible way to vote in regards to, I'm not going to vote for what I want. I'm going to make sure what I really don't want, because that's the part that I'm afraid of, doesn't get into power. And I totally understand that. I mean, there's some horrible shit that Pierre has mentioned that I'm absolutely against. Many things. And two, it's if there's such a push that keeps going for strategic voting, it's really this discussion that I'm sure all of us are more than willing to discuss, which is it means our current electoral system is not working. And this is where we could talk about ranked ballot or proportional representation, to which one would be better and which one would work better and how they would each work.
We don't have time for that, though.
Sorry?
We don't have time for that, though.
No, we don't.
We'll do that next week.
Yeah, that's a huge discussion. Actually, well, it's not even next week as much as I'd probably say, like, post this election. I think there's, like, two absolute big discussions we should probably have. One, as we were talking about here, what is the future of the NDP at this point? Like, based on what's going on and whatnot. And Jessa's already like, no. And two, if we're
as long as it's not a constructive conversation.
Come on, it's always a good positive. No, but also number two, it's if we're going to continue going from, especially if Pierre loses this election, more than likely he's going to get replaced. That's just the conservative way. Their leader did well, then suddenly tanked. They're going to probably yank him and replace him with somebody else.
They didn't do that to Jagmeet.
Jagmeet, no, but that's NDP. I'm talking about the Conservatives. They will yank every time they lose. They did it to O'Toole. They did it to Scheer. They'll always
ruthless.
Do that. They're ruthless, yeah. So they're going to probably replace him. And let's be honest here, it's probably not a terrible idea. He's just uncharismatic. But there's nothing to indicate that there might not be putting in another terrible candidate next. Just as bad, or maybe even worse. No, could be better, could be worse than Pierre. We're not going to know till it becomes a thing. Which means, do we continue in regards to the whole strategic voting because we keep having to do this? Or can we start having a discussion like, there's needs to be a better system. Trudeau failed us in not giving it to us. Maybe that should be the next thing we start demanding.
Yeah. And
when I helped Matt DeCourcy get elected in 2015, he promised all of us that 2015 would be the last election under first past the post. I got that like on a quote and a poster. So I don't even know what we're talking about. But Mark Carney's gonna fix this for us. They promised.
Yeah, it's like the same thing as fixing the NDP, though. Like trying to spend a lot of effort simply on trying to eke out or carve out little bits of power in the legislature just seems like I'd rather go to Michael's plan of like attack, and like that's almost the same. The good news is you can make that plan now because it's not really going to matter who wins. There'll be small changes, but like the plan is the same, right? Our tactics pretty much remain the same. It's not all done at the ballot box. That's my advice to folks that are just like, all these politicians fucking suck. Even the creators out there that are just trying to help, like just trying to, through strategic voting campaigns or just, signing up for Jagmeet's trip on the bus. You don't have to push a party, unless you're cheering for Michael. You can help him. Or there's other candidates out there that you can, find good people running. But you don't have to choose a party for your platform. You can just pick an issue or multiple issues and push those. Like it's you really don't have to play that game with them. It's like the advice to just like shoot down range, right? Like just stay on track of what you were doing anyway. All of these elections, they really kind of upend our discussions, and look at us, we're talking about military spending instead of housing, or like all of it is important, it's related, but really the things that we wanted to be election issues aren't. And I think because we're focused so much on like leadership and the parties themselves, sometimes I'm just as
Foreign
guilty.
policy is huge this election compared to normal. Just huge.
It is. You say foreign, but you mean like U.S., and I know that is foreign, but folks don't see it that way, right? When you say foreign, they mean like China, right? They're talking about China, or Russia and Ukraine, or Palestine.
We're not increasing defense spending because Kazakhstan wants to attack.
No, but but we started this a month or maybe 2 months ago. We're talking about how we integrated border control with them, right? That was one of Trump's first demands. We were already doing it. We've been doing it for years. So that's a big fucking schmozzle now, right? If our cooperation isn't going to be the same, as Carney says, our relationship's never going to be the same, right? You might want to untie those border controls. I mean, you could just get rid of border, but that's, again, a whole other discussion. Let's move into our disruptive updates. We did spend a lot of time on the headlines, so we're kind of going to fire through the disruptive updates so we don't lose Joe, and we can get to our activist tip of the week. Joe, I didn't add it to the headline, so I'm going to give you a heads up. Did you maybe want to talk about the guilty verdicts at some point? Or do you want to save that until you digest it more?
There's not much to go over. In particular here, this is let's see if I can bring this up for you guys here. Chris Barber and Tamara Litch were found guilty on one charge of
mischief.
Not mischief, counseling to mischief. I got that wrong.
Oh.
I did.
Counseling to mischief. What
counseling
the fuck?
to mischief, which makes it was counseling to mischief. They were found to be culpable of also mischief, but because of an arrangement, and the Crown said that they stayed the charge of mischief, that they weren't found, so they weren't able to be found guilty on it because the charge of mischief itself was stayed. But they were found on counseling mischief, as well as Chris Barber himself was also found guilty on violating a court order, and that's in regards to there was a court order injunction saying to stop the horns, and then he told everybody in I think one of the videos, keep your hand down the rope, just keep blasting the horns. So this is and Tamara Litch has already said that she's even before the verdict came out, she was planning on to appeal it if she was to be found guilty on anything. She can try, but for those who aren't aware, when it comes to appeals, you need to find an error in the judgment, and it's a legal technical error. That's the only way the appeals work. And by the sounds of it, this judge, I've been told by people who've observed them before in regards to other trials, particularly in regards to convoy, they're pretty technical and they're pretty specific in regards to making sure everything's correct. And so I'm still trying to get back some information right now to find out when the sentencing is going to be. I got the feeling it's going to be very, very minor.
What's the Crown asking for?
The Crown hasn't said what they're asking for, but this Crown is different than the one for Pat King, which I'll get into in a minute too. But I got the feeling they're probably not going to be asking for very much, and the articles haven't really said too much as to what they're going to be offering to. Reason why I mentioned Pat King is also the Crown for that particular case is also asking to do an appeal because they're trying to get the rest of his charges also flipped over to guilty, and they want to have him do more time. So this is concerning, as I'm sure to everybody, because particularly with the Pat King as well as the other ones, whatever comes out from this, you can expect they're going to be using as a template for Palestinian protests or labor action or you name it. Any action, this is what they're going to be using. And they already have, they will continue to.
And there's no shortage of people cheering this on. I get it. I get these people are pieces of shit. The convoy was awful. The community wanted it out. I acknowledge all those things, but yeah, watching progressives or whatever the fucking label is that people are throwing around these days is watching them like be unsatisfied at the level of charges or prison time for mischief, for encouraging people to honk horns in defiance of a court order. That really bothers me because I advocate for disruption every fucking week. Twice a week, right? When I'm on here, when I release episodes, constantly. And like if I'm talking about the Toronto bubble law, I'm on record many, many times going, if they pass that bubble law, no, they didn't. Right? No, the fuck they didn't. They're not going to take away our right. You know, it is the duty of citizens to defy unjust laws, right? And just because it's our enemies in court doesn't mean all of a sudden we start cheering for the prison system. Stop it. Like,
I couldn't agree with what you're saying more. When I sent people to protests here in New Brunswick, big one was when the premier went to the third-party energy board and said, hey, you need to raise the gas prices. The Irvings are unhappy. We sent, like 30 of us went and said that's time to resign. We knew it wasn't going to make a big enough news story on its own, so we wanted to blow it up a little bit more. Everyone was, oh, you didn't get a permit to protest. And I organized a number of protests. I've never once got a permit. You need a permit in the city of Fredericton.
Yeah. Fuck that.
I dare them. Go arrest the leader of a political party on the steps of the legislature because they didn't get a permit to protest. Right to assembly is something that like hundreds of years ago they realized like, oh yeah, you shouldn't be putting laws in the way of right to assembly because if people want to assemble, they're going to. It's a really, really important thing that you just assemble anyway. If the police are going to be demagogues, they're going to be demagogues. There's nothing you can do. You protect yourself, but you have to assemble and express yourself anyway.
See, you could be charged for that, right? Right? By encouraging people to do these things. So, yeah, thanks for that update, Joe. We'll keep an eye on stuff like that. I don't pay enough attention to what the right is doing or going through enough, so Joe makes sure that I am up to date. It's a self-protection kind of thing. I've got 3 direct actions. Well, I'm just going to run through. I got 4 updates. If folks, guests here, think of any, or anybody watching in the comments has an action or a grassroots update that you want me to share, post it up, let me know. I'll try to work it into the rundown, but I'll also find it with our social media accounts and boost it that way as well. So this week, we launched, our episode was called Student Hunger Strikes. It's only a matter of time. And it's talking to UBC students who just recently ended their hunger strike on their own terms after some of them had been on there for 12 or 13 days. And that is no solid food. They were using the Chief Teresa Spence approach of, fish broth and whatnot. It sounded brutal. And they, it's kind of an extreme form of nonviolent protest. But these are students who, for 72 days, some of them formed an encampment on their university campuses and got no response from the administration. And it's been sustained months of direct actions and petitions and all sorts of things, including a student strike. And so, unfortunately, they did end their hunger strike without any response from admin. And they were emailing these folks every day going here's how my body's reacting to the hunger strike. Here's how many days these students have gone without food. And they never even emailed these students back, no response. So crickets. So I think the day after the hunger strike ended, some students on campus, an autonomous group, that's the phrase we use now. I tried to ask them, are you part of a student group? They're like, no, we're just all individuals, right? Don't come down on any particular group. So they released, an autonomous group released crickets. like live crickets into a lunch event that the president of the university was having. So I thought that was a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's also just demonstrates like it's continual. Those folks that did the hunger strike, they never, you got to listen to the episode to get an idea, but they never thought that the hunger strike would be what moved the university or what would stop the occupation. But like they're just wanting to do whatever possible, like so they can look back and say they did everything they possibly could to get their university to divest. So folks should follow them. There's quite a few student groups on the campus. You can go to the Blueprints of Disruption Instagram feed, and I've put up a couple reels, and UBC Encampment, UBC Divest, Faculty for Palestine, UBC, they've got a petition there. Help them put on some pressure to their administration. That president's a real piece of shit. He's not even responded. So if you guys can help make some noise around that, they would really be appreciative. And one of the things that they thought that they could achieve through this hunger strike, if they couldn't get anybody to move, would be to inspire other people, right? To do whatever they can. So you help share their story, then that helps kind of amplify the work that they did beyond their campus. Sometimes it's hard to see these actions go on without any tangible victories, but the mentality is there that it's just like drop by drop by drop, we fill the cup, eventually it will overflow. And you never know what drop that's going to be. And sometimes the drops you put in, like nobody even notices after it's done, right? But it all gets us there in the end. So kudos to those students for their hunger strike and for continuing the pressure beyond that. We'll keep you updated as to what they're doing next. There's students in Glasgow University also in hunger strike. This is something McGill tried as well. And they actually worked with the students at UBC to kind of give them tips and talk to them a little bit about it. So, that's an update from our episode this week. Another update. Last week, we talked about safe injection sites in Ontario closing. 9 out of the 10 have closed, despite a court injunction on Friday. So like just after we get off of the Rabble Rants last Friday, we got news that there was a successful court injunction. The judge said, okay, you can't close these until I make my ruling. So there was a stay on the closures. Everybody celebrated and it felt like a victory, except the next work day. So the following Monday, these locations closed anyway. I tried to understand why they closed despite the court injunction, and the response I got was, it was multifaceted, but basically you'd be defying the province, and the province is promising to turn a lot of these locations into what they're calling HART hubs, HART. The funding is not there for that. The agreements aren't in place for anything like that, even though the premier is getting on his social media saying like these are up and running. They're not. Advocates want you to know for sure they are not up and running at all. Moving trucks were there to remove a lot of the stuff that there are in these locations. And also there was really no promised protection from the feds on the issue. So without clarity and protection moving forward, they made the call to shut those facilities. And they've got another court date to hear on the injunction, the final ruling, and that's on April 7th. That's Monday, I believe. And the advocates of the Harm Reduction Coalition and the Toronto Indigenous Harm Reduction Coalition and a bunch of other groups, they've really mobilized around this. They are asking people to go down to 330 University Avenue in Toronto to pack the courthouse for 10 a.m. on Monday. If you can't do that, you can always stay tuned to their IG accounts or their Twitter accounts and boost the signal. I don't know what's going to happen on Monday, but these advocates are doing everything possible. They've also started national days of action to make it a federal issue. The provinces are not really responding to this, so they're trying to get it onto the campaign trail. So you can look up a harm reduction coalition group in your area. There's tons of them, but if you are in the Toronto area, there's no shortage of them. And they're all doing really great work. So did anybody want to comment on the safe injection story there before we go on to another one?
I would just make a quick comment, just that this is an issue that obviously is important in the communities where those those 9 sites are closing. But it's also an issue like all across the country in communities that don't have supervised consumption sites and have been advocating for them for years and years and years. Just like here in Barrie, we have a strong group of people who've been advocating for it and are really doing everything they can to get the toxic drug crisis addressed, facing a lot of challenges, a lot of people kind of in their way. So I just think going forward over the next few years, this is going to be a really important issue for people to really keep an ear, an eye on, because it's something that's affecting communities right across the country.
Absolutely. The latest report this morning is that they've already reported overdose or drug poisoning deaths in the areas where the locations had shut down. So, when we said that they saved lives, that wasn't rhetoric. They had prevented 22,000 overdoses in these locations. So absolutely devastating, because the activists there are also like, they're at a crossroads too. Like, will delivering harm reduction services be against the law in these areas? How will they help their community moving forward without ending up in jail? And a lot of questions that they have to answer. And, like, it seems like they're trying all the levers of power, but they really do need a little bit more support on the ground to make this a louder issue that forces politicians to respond, because there's really not been much from the opposition on this. Seems to be an issue they want to pick up as, and that doesn't surprise me. It's not a safe topic to talk about. We have to make more space for this, because it's really not just, it's not a drug even issue. Again, it's a class issue, because it's poor drug users that they're targeting specifically. So, yeah. So not the update I wanted to give, but the fight isn't over. So, folks, if you can get down and boost that on April 7th, that would be great. Another, folks, just today, sorry, I've lost track where I am. Which one do you have pulled up? Joe, can you pull up the Jews Say No to Genocide if you can? I can do that. I think that was just today. They have taken over a building. This is obviously part of the, they're in the Toronto office building of Global Affairs.
Global Affairs Canada building in Toronto.
Thank you. And yeah, this is part of the Arms Embargo Now movement. So if you've not been paying attention, Canada never did. It's been on and off, but contracts are being renewed and pushed forth, and we are still supplying weapons to Israel. So that campaign is going fully. If you scroll through that one for me, Joe, they have phone numbers there. They're asking people to call Melanie Joly today. I think it's like a carousel of photos there. Yeah.
There it is.
Call Melanie Joly and her minion, deputy something. The print is so small now and it's not in my notes.
Shalina Anand, Assistant Deputy Minister to Global Affairs Canada. And her number is also provided 343-203-3555.
So, yeah, like this is just an example of when these direct actions happen too. Like, you might not be one of the 100 people that are risking arrest and taking over a building or doing all of these things that they're doing, but you can amplify it by sharing their story, by looking for their calls to action. It might be a petition or phone calls like this. It might be for jail support afterwards. Who knows? But, there's ways that you can boost this and participate from home, so to speak. So those are just, I like sharing direct actions because, we talk a lot about really shitty headlines and dire situations, but there's no shortage of stories of people fighting back against them either. So, and they're getting more and more disruptive, which is, as the host of Blueprints of Disruption, pleases me, right? More and more organizations we talk to have kind of come to this understanding that a lot of the typical avenues they've used in the past, pleading with politicians to give them things, is not really working. So they're trying different avenues. Yes, they're not new. They've historically been tried and tested, but folks are really getting down to business. One other thing there that you might not be able to participate in, but again, it's an example of a lot of, it's not even unique. I'll put the link for this event in the comments there, tenant organizing is just blowing up. If you've been listening to the podcast, you'll know this because we've interviewed so many tenant organizations. And I always think the story is going to be the same, and it's never the same. They give different tactics and different stories of landlords, and there's just a lot of work going on. They're doing a lot of education too. So this is a particular campaign by York Southwestern Tenants Union. They have been amazing in not just like fighting their own landlords, but helping other tenant unions be born, spring up, and support other ones. And they're doing a lot of the educational work that needs to be done, and growing like larger campaigns that target the issues or multiple landlords. This is an example, and they're going to get into the landlord cartel and tools to fight them. But I see weekly, what is it? The Ottawa NOC, the Neighborhood Organizing Committee. Anyway, Ottawa NOC, they do a lot of tenant organizing. So if you look up tenant unions in your area, you're going to find one, like especially in the urban centers. But you'll also probably find one that are teaching people how to start their own tenant unions. So if you are interested in how that all works, just log on for one of these webinars and you'll get an idea. If nothing else, you'll be connected to people who are doing the work, and you can help them out as well. But it is a growing way of mobilizing the working class, which, we talked to the Vancouver Tenants Union last week. That was last week's episode. But there's some neighborhoods in Vancouver are 80% renters. Can you imagine being able to mobilize 80% of a neighborhood towards something, anything, even if it's just to prevent an eviction? So lots of potential in tenant organizing. So please check that out. Anybody have any other updates of what might be happening in their neck of the woods in terms of pushing back, or updates from older campaigns? Anything going on in Barrie? Barrie's actually quite active. I think when I share some actions from Barrie, I think people are surprised to see that there is a Palestinian solidarity group there that, is regularly active. What about any updates there?
Yeah, it's the next couple of weeks are kind of slow in that we did have a banner drop over one of the highway overpasses about a week ago. So we did that like for the Palestinian solidarity movement. There's some talk about organizing some educational events around the Palestinian solidarity. So I think the movement's kind of moving in that direction. And then around the encampment evictions and supervised consumption sites, there's a couple actions in the works in terms of educating people about the situation. Also teaching people how to use naloxone, things like that. There's organizations that are getting together to do those types of things. So that's kind of going to be happening over the next few weeks.
Slightly different, but on the journalism front, the New Brunswick Media Co-op, which is a really, really good local media organization I do some volunteering for, they kind of pushed back against the University of New Brunswick to the point where the University of New Brunswick, they haven't fully divested or done stuff. They stopped harassing their own students, which is a step, because the media co-op researched enough and leaked a whole bunch of their security staff's I don't know how they got them, to be honest, but they had a whole bunch of messages from the security staff that were like, oh yeah, we'll follow these people, or anyone like doing the Palestine stuff, we're gonna. But of course it's like local New Brunswick good old boys who are the security staff, so they messed it all up. It got leaked, and now
it's like that signal chat.
Yeah, it seems like the school is super now. Anytime someone wants to do something, the security doesn't come anywhere near them, which is very interesting. And I don't think it's a model that can be used elsewhere. But it is interesting that in like some of these smaller towns, the university just gave up. They're done. They don't want to. They can't be bothered. But that's because we don't have as much money coming into some of these big universities, I think.
That reminds me, University of Calgary also just got caught again. I mean, we've talked about them and how they violently cleared the encampment and, you know, colluded with the province and the police. It was really a dirty story uncovered by Jeremy Appel of The Orchard. But then he's just gotten more. He just like, now everyone knows, give your dirt to Jeremy on University of Calgary. So he's obviously got people coming to him with more sources. And did he break this story or not? I don't know. I'll give him credit anyway because he's awesome. But they got caught like destroying their records of the plans that they made to dismantle the encampment and, you know, in the way that they were going to do it. So once people started looking into it, they started just destroying the records. They got caught. So I imagine this kind of garbage has been replicated on almost every campus. It's just a matter of enough FOI requests and persistence by independent media who don't have the time, right? So it's always nice when we do dig some of it up and expose it, but it's usually independent journalists that are doing that work and not getting paid enough for it. So support independent media like Jeremy Appel at The Orchard or the Co-op. You could name drop that again. What is it? What was the media co-op?
The New Brunswick Media Co-op. Yeah, they have like one paid staff. Like I volunteer for them. Most people volunteer for them. They're huge for the size of like our, especially because there's no journalism anymore. It's like all the private sector stuff's closed down because private sector's better, right?
Yeah, and it's like all U.S. owned media anyway, which can't be helpful in the current circumstances.
That doesn't count as real stuff to me. That's on media's propaganda.
Yeah, they still get media credentials.
That's fair.
But mind you, Rebel News does too. So, by definition, I'm a journalist. So we'll just we won't gatekeep.
Call yourself a journalist if you want to be, because I promise you the crazy conservatives are. If you want to get into journalism, just have a blog. I'm an aspiring journalist. Go for it.
I'll do that.
Independent journalist, I think, is the term they like to use, at least on the right.
Yes. We all use it, but we have to do this when we talk about theirs. No, I was taught better by my previous partner Santiago there, where, you know, journalists are journalists. If you have a story to tell, that's not something you should be asking the state for credentials for or getting people to legitimize you, right? Because there's always dangers in that. We just eat shit on each other's media, and that's okay for now. We won't get any deeper than that for the moment. But anybody else have any disruptive updates before we get to the activist tip? And again, it's just who's disconnected? What happened? We good? All right. Okay, so
It's over here. Let me take a look.
we often, yeah, you go see what that was. We often talk about when we go to the activist tip of the week, we've done like how to prepare your cell phone for an action, what to expect for bail conditions, what to do when you're arrested. Aaliyah did a really good one. Aaliyah Pabani did a great one on how to pick a good target, not a non-violent, like a political pressure target. And this time it's going to be a little more broad strokes. And they did this because there's varying degrees of people in action where they're at. You know, there's folks that are really upset about what's going on, but they don't know how to insert themselves in any way. And then there's people that are, you know, planning direct actions as we speak and growing networks of mutual aid and all kinds of, like, they're in the thick of it. So most of our updates are actually geared towards those folks, I suppose. So I thought I would do just a quick rundown that I found from Friends of the Earth Scotland. It was on their webpage, and I thought it was decent, kind of just like 7 bullet points really to... Jody, if you want to share the graphic just so people don't have to look at my face the whole time I'm talking. But, and again, even the first line here, it might seem obvious, like join a group. I mention all kinds of very specific groups every time we're on. And, you know, like I said, every Blueprints episode has another organization and links to them. But, you know, find a group in your area that is doing work that speaks to you. You don't have to solve all the world's problems at once. You just need to find people. You just need to find people. That is actually just the first step. Like, find people. They're going to, that think alike, right? Like, don't go and join the Legion. That's not what I'm talking about. Find an organization that's doing community work. I don't like the Legion, but I won't get into that right now. And another tip that they have, oh, sorry, yeah. I think when I'm scrolling, it's scrolling. Next slide. No, I'm just kidding. So take a friend. You're not the only person. You are venting to somebody online in your home, somebody who's kind of in the same spot as you politically, but hasn't gotten their feet wet. Or maybe they have and you just don't want to go by yourself. That is totally legitimate. Find a friend and bring them to the most basic session. Like, a lot of these groups will have open meetings, you know, or real entry level things for you to get to know the organization a little bit better before you risk getting arrested with them or whatnot, whatever your plans are. So bring a friend. You got to bring people along, right? Like, we're not going to create the revolution we need unless we have that threshold. But the threshold is small. It's like 3%. That was a fun episode. You need 3% to stage a revolution. Again, another discussion. But number 3, next slide. Realize it's okay not to do things or not to know things. So you're going to go into these groups and you have to do that with like an open mind. Like, we don't walk into groups assuming that we've got something to teach them. It's important that when you organize, most of the stuff that you do revolves around listening and gathering information. So to keep that mindset, as well as like as an organizer, expect to answer lots of questions, right? And make an environment where people can ask the most basic questions and make time to explain things from that most basic level. Because I'm so guilty of this, where I'll walk into a discussion and I'll assume everybody already knows, you know, like how shitty the NDP is, right? And then I realize that there's a whole backstory there that people need to get where I'm at. And so you got to kind of take that time to do the work. So on both levels, the third step is just take in as much information so that when you take action, you're doing it from an informed position. And number 4 is you'll join groups and they won't be for you. You may not like the structure. Maybe it's just not convenient, the actions they choose or the times they choose to meet. There could be all kinds of reasons. So don't be afraid to move to another group, to try something else, new, maybe who goes from a different approach, tactically speaking. Maybe it's a different issue. Maybe you weren't worked up enough about that particular issue, or they weren't going at it from as, you know, an ideological point of view as you would be going. So don't be afraid to just leave groups and try other groups until you find something that really speaks to you. Don't feel like you are obligated to kind of stay in something you feel is fruitless. And get organized is the next one. And we talk about organizing a lot like it's a really complex thing. There's theories around it and so many ways you can kind of figure out how to do it better. But this isn't that. This is really just like literally get yourself organized. Like, get a calendar. Show up and do the things that you tell people that you're going to do. Right? Be in the places that are going to have actions. Like, just, you got to get yourself there to do these things. But in order to do that, you have to remember. So literally get yourself organized so that you don't over promise yourself as well. You're no use to these organizations and these groups if you're like, yeah, I'm going in and I'm going to do this and the other thing. And the reality is you only actually have 1 hour a week to give them your free labor. So be realistic about your time, but you only know what time you have if you're organized. And I can only say that because with someone with ADHD, I have 0 executive function. So this is advice that I am taking myself at the moment, right? I'm also taking notes. I'm sure there's people out there that can attest that, like, well, you're not all that organized, and they are right. So number 5 was just as much for me as for you folks. I like this one. They've only got 2 paragraphs on number 6 here, but you could go on forever. Remember, you're part of a movement. So like that can speak to so many other things. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Chances are, if you've got a great idea for something, someone's probably already doing it somewhere and you can help them. You don't have to start from scratch all the time. You also don't have to carry the whole weight of whatever you're fighting for. And folks have maybe heard that band analogy or orchestra analogy, where not all instruments play at the same time. As long as there's some instruments playing, then nobody sees a disruption in the song, and so you can stop and take a breath, as you know, in a choir or whatnot, and then get back into the game. So, you know, just keep in mind that you're part of a movement that also encourages you to grow. So if you're doing mutual aid in your community, why not network with another community that's doing the same? There's a lot of things you can share, resources, ideas, and whatnot. So like growing coalitions and networks is also part of remembering that you're part of a larger movement of people doing that. And then the last is something we often forget about because we're in such dire situations. We have limited time and resources, but you have to be having fun and you have to be making connections with people in your community, ideally. But, you know, some folks are doing it online and by necessity, and that is okay too. But you have to work in social events to your movement, right? There has to be time to celebrate victories, to just have third spaces for people to socialize, to not talk about politics. You can talk about politics, but yeah, we don't often work that into the agenda, right? We have direct actions, we have planning meetings and all of that, but you know, pizza parties are okay too. Please take COVID precautions, but you do have to work fun. You have to schedule it in. It doesn't sound like fun if you schedule it, but you do have to keep that in mind. It has to be part of the agenda at some point, or people will burn out. People are burning out, right? So while you're having fun and making friends, like check in on the folks that you're working with too and see how they're doing, especially if you've not heard from them in a bit. I kind of ran through that really quick because it just, you know, we've kind of just gone a long time, but does anybody have any kind of entry point tips or anything they want to add to those ideas of getting your feet wet in activism?
I would just say quickly, it can be scary to take that leap. I would just tell people to, like, don't be afraid. There's lots of people out there that will help and support you, as long as you're in it for the right reasons. Everything will go well. Like don't be afraid to put yourself out there. It's important.
And everything we've been talking about, you can't always expect you're going to win legal power. They can change the law on you at any time unless you got your favorite people as a majority government. But you can gain de facto power. You can learn new skills. You can be more useful to your allies. You can volunteer for organizations. These are all ways that people throughout history have been able to change their circumstances because they've been useful. There have been very few illiterate farmers who have been able to change history, and it's not because they don't want to. It's because they don't have, like, the more you learn, the more you go out and talk to people from different walks of life or figure out what types of organizations you like being a part of, the more you'll gain, like, actual real power. And very quickly, you'll be the expert in whatever you get into, even if it's not that niche. There's not a lot of people in Canada doing activism stuff. You will think, oh, I'm the new person. Give it a year. 1 year. 1 year. If you stick with it 1 year, you will be the person people go to in your field. Probably. Like, it's Canada.
I mean, when I started organizing, like, the grassroots, like the local ridings in Ontario for the NDP, I found, like, yeah, I became, like, this go-to person for, like, answering everybody's questions. So then I felt like it was my need to know the answer to all those questions. So it became this, like, autistic circle of interest, hyperfixation, and that is certainly true. You mentioned, like, expertise. Folks sometimes, well, folks can have imposter syndrome and think that you're not like suited for it. And I'll tell you that you absolutely are, that it takes all kinds. That was one of the lessons that we did one time, was that like the levels of activism that are there. Some of them are silent and anonymous and still play a very critical role. But your skill set is valued. And I'm speaking to every one of you. Like, you don't know when you plan a campaign, the types of skill sets that you'll need until you need them, or until someone offers them and you're like, that is an excellent tool. You know, like video editing, public relations knowledge, you know, a pickup truck, like it, not even necessarily a skill set, but like a resource, a button making machine, a paper cutter. I mean, like, it's just a lot of things. And so you add value simply by being another person that has these resources. And as an organizer,
you do like surveys and marketing stuff, because that's what I went to school for and do like as part of my jobs. That's super useful. There are not a lot of people in like left-wing circles who can create like a statistically relevant survey and like explain to people why this is the appropriate amount of people to send it out to and the amount of whatever. This is, people write questions that it's like you can't even ask that question, because even if everyone responds, that question doesn't actually tell you anything. Like people, and you don't, it's just, if you do it, it's like anything. You do it for work or you do it enough times, you get good at it. And so anything that you, if you're good at carpentry, my goodness, wait till people need their signs. Like my stepdad, he doesn't give a crap about politics, but he likes me. So anytime I need a sign built, he's the sign guy. Get people like that. The reason why the federal NDP wants me to help them right now is because I could go get signatures for every riding in the province for them, because you just need enough local people. But they parachute from out of here and they think that they're going to have the connections necessary. It's not that hard to do it. I could get them every candidate they want. They could do it themselves if they got here. But it's like, it's the same thing. I've calculated that you need about one activist for every 10,000 people you have, and that's in like provincial politics. If you're just trying to change housing policy, you can be the expert for 1 million people yourself. Get 20 people like you can speak for the whole country on housing. Like you can really change stuff.
Oh, I didn't realize you had a cat in your lap this whole time. Is that a new addition?
For a while.
Okay.
Like 10 minutes. You got bored.
So, yeah, I think, like, the general message there is, like, there's a place for you in a lot of these organizations and transferable skill sets. But, yeah, it's hard to hear all of these things if you have no idea what to do about it. And so the answer is, like, there's something somewhere that you can do to feel like you're, you know, contributing to the cause. So I encourage you to, you know, link up with some of the guests that we've talked to. Check out Blueprints of Disruption. I mean, it's an endless, I think we're at like 177 episodes now of different organizations. Like some of them like are 2 people, some of them are global, and there's no shortage of entry points for folks. And then you get to be part of a community where you can put more hopeful energy, right? Rather than, because when we talk about strategic voting and voting out of fear, and like it's not a great strategy, but it's also not a great mindset, right? To always be reactive and just avoiding fear as opposed to putting your energy into something constructive and hopeful. And that is the whole goal of the whole show, is to hopefully show people that there are avenues to political change, you know, beyond the ballot box as well. And that isn't just for other people. It's absolutely for you as well. Thank you, Chris and Michael. You very much contributed to today's discussion. It was a pleasure having you. And yeah, thanks for everybody who's been watching and contributed.
Good
with
luck
the
with
comments.
your campaign, Michael.
Yes, Michael.
Thank
if
you.
you're
I
in
hope you
Barrie,
win. And I'm not saying that facetiously. Tell people you plan to win.
better not be
Go for it.
Yeah, I do.
Hell yeah. Like,
I wish I lived
it's,
I wish I does Innisfil part of your
No, I'm in the
constituency?
I'm North Barrie.
Okay, I was like, maybe I can get my in-laws to put a communist sign on their lawn, but I don't know for sure I could swing that. But if you were in my riding, it would be that exception I would make where I'm not putting my energy into electoral politics, but I would absolutely help you go door to door, Michael, or whatever you need. So if I'm in Barrie, I'm going to ring you, or even in Innisfil, I'll hop up and pop a few signs in if you need them.
Sure thing, yeah.
Thank you, folks. Make sure you tune in next week and check out the podcast for this week. We drop one every Tuesday, and we'll see you back again next Friday at noon Eastern. What is that? What was that? 2 p.m. Atlantic time, Chris? What time did you log on?
1 to 3 p.m.
There you go. My idea of time.
The newfies that are weird. They get an extra 30 minutes, but. I'll
have to keep that in mind if we ever get anybody from Newfoundland on here.
Yeah, they're weird, you know. No, just...
Now. The cat ran on that note. She's not having anything part of that.
My cat's a newfie. He wasn't for it.
Figures. All right. Till next time, gentlemen. Have a good day.